episode of Bro History. I have myself and I have Danny Abdul-Jabbar on the line. Today we're going to be talking about North Korea again, just because it's prevalent in the news. Danny, what's going on, man?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing well. I can't complain. Did you hear about that duck in Central Park? There's a Mandarin
the mallard,
duck.
the Mandarin, yeah. That's kind of old news.
It's old news, but I just heard about it today. But it's still there apparently.
Oh, word! He's surviving the winter.
He's surviving the winter. And for people who don't know, in Central Park, there's a rare Mandarin duck, and it's become quite famous in the past, 3 months or so. I just caught on to the story. I had no idea. But apparently people are taking off work. People are going crazy for this sexy-ass duck. They're trying to get pictures of it.
It's like a Pokemon, Everyone's running out in the real world trying to find it.
Well, I looked at pictures of it, and I was trying to find it today. I couldn't find it. Apparently, it's only in one small pond in Central Park. Mm-hmm. And so I think I'm going to try to find it sometime this week. I just need to see this sexy-ass duck. This sexy-ass motherfucking duck. I need to see it.
I don't think I've ever seen the duck, but it is a pretty vibrant-looking one at that.
All I know is that it's like duck mania. It's Mandarin duck mania. The women are going crazy for it. People are taking off work to find this thing, and I need to see this sexy-ass duck. All right, enough of that. So I wanted to bring you – not bring you on. You're the co-host of the show. But mm-hmm. I wanted to talk to you about North Korea, mainly because I did an episode on Thursday last week. I'm not sure if you listened to it or not, but basically what I wanted to do with that last episode of North Korea was just give kind of like a backstory leading up to the events of the summit that took place in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. Really just explaining – the process of that what were the events that led up to the summit, really, and how Moon was elected on the Sunshine policy, how Moon's base really wants him to make peace with North Korea, and how Trump kind of received a lot of credit that he didn't deserve for the North Korean summit. I say that because before he was for meeting Kim Jong-un, he was against it. He threatened South Korea. He threatened to put tariffs on them.
Little Rocket Man. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, he was calling him Rocket Man, Fire and Fury, all that stuff. Like, everyone's pretty familiar with that rhetoric. And South Korea went ahead and they met with them anyway. Before they met, they were already exchanging culture ties. They had that joint hockey team in the Olympics. And
that's right.
The K-pop band was playing there. So they were kind of easing tensions through culture.
Right.
There's nothing really official, and then
it was
they went
a pretty
ahead
good
and
approach, I think.
That's the Dennis Rodman approach. That's what Dennis Rodman said in 2013. He said
he wanted to bring basketball over.
He was right.
Yeah, no, he was.
He was right. Like, there's nothing like sports to importing sports into a culture goes a long way.
Yeah.
It really does go a long way. And what Dennis Rodman was saying, he said, like, let's first start with basketball, then let's start with music, and then, eventually if we exchange some culture ties and, people are more familiar with, like, American products and American culture, it'll be a lot easier to transition them into a normal society. And goddamn, Dennis Rodman was completely reasonable in saying all that stuff. And I think that's really the approach that South Korea took. Not saying if they followed his advice, but I think he did. He's been president at all the summits, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not 100% sure if he was at the last one, but he was at the one that took place in Singapore. But that's besides the point. I just wanted to make the point that the last episode of Bro History, the last episode where I spoke about North and South Korea, I wanted to make the point that the reason why North Korea came up to the bargaining table is because they're in a very bad economic situation. They're borderline. They are kind of just a failed state that's ran by a dictator.
Yeah.
And they started producing nuclear weapons in the first place with the goal of negotiating them away because they thought that would be their only way to get back into a
The
place where
world
they
stage, yeah.
yeah, the world stage. So they built they built those nuclear programs to barter them away. And what I said is that they don't need nuclear weapons as a deterrent because they actually have two. I mean, it does serve as a deterrent. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't, but there
Sure.
is another deterrent. They have two other deterrents that they don't, that they have that are very strong. Number one is their artillery.
That's right.
That they have very advanced artillery, and I want to get into that with you.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
As the main topic for today. The type of artillery they have on the basically on the DMZ zone, the border between North and South Korea, that could absolutely kill thousands of people on demand if they needed to. And second, if North Korea were to become, and this is not an intentional deterrent that they came up with, but it acts as a deterrent to China at the very least. If North Korea ever became a failed state, then there would be a huge refugee crisis.
That's right.
In South Korea and China. Mm-hmm. And I don't think either country wants that to happen.
Nope.
But let's concentrate on
that first one.
On that first that first one. So can you speak a little bit more about what type of artillery North Korea has?
Yep. So the artillery that you're referring to is I guess the most recent one is the M1978 Koksan, or Koksan. I have no idea how it's pronounced. It is a 170 millimeter self-propelled artillery gun, and in layman's terms, that just means it's a tank with a giant ass gun on it, like a big ass tube. I forget exactly how long that tube is, but 170 millimeters wide, like a diameter. That's like 6.5, 7 inches. The bullets are 6.5, 7 inches wide, which is a big ass bullet. Their range is important, but I'll talk about why it's important in a second. But depending on the artillery that they're firing out of these guns, they can get anywhere between 25 and 40 miles. So that's important because the capital of South Korea, Seoul, South Korea, happens to be 35 miles from the demilitarized zone between North Korea and South Korea. And guess where North Korea stacks all of their artillery units? Right along the border. So you mentioned something early on that I want to kind of slightly correct. I wouldn't say that the Koksan artillery system is an advanced artillery system. That's not necessarily true. So a lot of the ones that they use have been in service since 1978. So that's not exactly advanced. And because of different things like sanctions and stuff like that, they're not openly trading new technology to update these things, right? What's incredibly dangerous about them is the proximity to South Korea, being only 35 miles from the border, and the sheer volume of them. So this is like the Sherman tank debate that we had a long time ago, right? They've got a bunch of artillery vehicles that, on their own, we have better artillery than they do. South Korea has really dope artillery too, like really advanced new ones. But the fact that they have, it's obviously they're not a very open nation, so the best estimates on how many they have go between 10 and 12,000 of these artillery weapons, and another, I want to say, 2,000 to 3,000 rocket launchers. Basically, these like S-400s, but shittier, But the combination of 15,000 guns aimed at South Korea right along the border, and how they've got them arranged, makes them a very, very deadly thing.
So I read different numbers. I think they have around between 14 to 17,000 units.
Right. It just depends on what exactly you're talking about. So the Koksan self-propelled guns, they have about 10 to 12,000, and then another 2 to 3,000 of those basic rocket launchers, right? But together, they put them together in a brigade, right? And what they do is the area, the topography, the geography of that near the demilitarized zone is very mountainous, right? So what they do is they hide they're not just chilling out in the open, right, for anyone to hit them with, right? They're hiding in the mountains. Like they bore out areas in the mountains with like blast shields and shit like that, and they just hide them in there, and then they can open up the doors and like just start firing in minutes if they wanted to. And what makes them so dangerous is that each one of them by themselves are kind of unreliable, but the sheer volume of them and how quickly they can deploy them and how close they are to South Korea would be devastating. So South Korea's, Seoul specifically, their capital city, has something like 25 million people there. It's almost half of their population. It's extremely dense. What would happen if they decided to use it would be devastating. So they've got two routes that they can go. Either A, they could hit military bases, both South Korean and U.S. military bases along the DMZ, pretty quickly and try to take out as much forces as they can, as much like military tech as they can, just with an insane barrage and hit those sites. Or they can try and hit Seoul and do massive casualties, which would, obviously they'd open themselves up for counterattack because they're not attacking a military installation, but it would create other issues. I think some estimates are like they can easily kill 25,000 people in a couple of minutes just with the artillery itself. But the chaos that would ensue, without even leveling the city, which they absolutely could, just when people are fleeing from the city, the infrastructure there isn't there to support like a mass, millions of people trying to leave one major metropolitan city. So it would create giant traffic jams, which would also create a lot of problems with the military trying to move their assets forward, north, right, from a southern war period, right? Now, obviously, the demilitarized zone is the most heavily armed area on the planet, like between North and South Korea. They've got more guns, more, anti-air missiles, more jets, more fucking everything than you can think of than anywhere else on the planet. But in a chaos situation like that, there's like if North Korea just decided to open fire one day, they'd really, really need to move more from the south to the north, and the traffic jams alone would make it very, very difficult to do.
Well, let me stop you right there. So what I would think what would happen, I don't see them ever ever using that artillery to launch an attack on a military base, because that would assume that the U.S. is just sitting on that, like all their military assets are in place right there. I see them only using it on the civilian population as a deterrent to invasion.
Yeah, they could, but it still makes tactical sense to hit military installations almost simultaneously with the civilian population, because they also want to make sure that, like, the second they start shooting, we know where they are. We've got satellites, we've got, planes, we've got all kinds of crazy technology to figure out where things are, but we can't see them at the moment because they're hidden in the mountains, right? So the second they start firing, we're going to hit them back in relatively short order. So it would make sense for them to hit some military installations as well, or just in general, because what it would do is cause the military to be in a defensive posture rather than an offensive posture. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Something I found really interesting is that I was looking up where the THAAD system is, and South Korea has THAAD, which is a
surface to air
surface to air. The really, our best one, right? Like the THAAD system is
arguably, yeah.
So that system is located down in southern South Korea.
That's correct.
The middle of the country.
Mm-hmm.
So wouldn't you think that? Well, you would think that that system would be placed on the border, right? But no, it's not placed on the border. And what I think is it's not placed on the border because those radar systems penetrate so deep, they don't want it to penetrate into China airspace.
Well, I think that's definitely true. I also think
And they don't
that
want
just
to politic around with that because China
yeah,
would be like, "What the fuck? Like, you can't have a radar system in our fucking country."
yeah, that definitely that plays a part in it. So China and North Korea have an interesting relationship. You know, in addition to China being pissed off, they're probably going to tip off North Korea the fact that they're moving their missile systems closer. You know, and if I were Kim Jong Un and you were placing, you know, Iron Dome or THAAD or you know S-400s on my border, I'd be pretty pissed. You know, so it would coax them into a strike. I think if they moved them, in addition to pissing off China, just having them on your doorstep wouldn't be good. They would see that as an offensive move, not a defensive move.
Yeah, I agree. But here's a good thing. So curious to hear. So my thoughts on the summit in Vietnam was that it was a failure. At least that was my take on Thursday.
Totally.
Curious to hear what your take is on it.
I mean, it was a total failure, obviously. I think, you know, I want to give credit where credit's due on the first go around. You know, Trump being willing, you know, a sitting U.S. president being willing to sit down with, you know, the leader of North Korea to try and iron out a deal, right? Was in a certain sense brave, definitely politically savvy, and just generally speaking, like a good idea in my opinion. You know, we make peace with our enemies. You know, that's who we make peace with. So even though I'm not a big Trump supporter, I was all right with him going to talk to it and try and see what happens, right? And it seemed like, you know, okay, they said they were gonna you know, start to denuke, but there were no like concrete steps in place, right? It was just more like a gentleman's agreement, like, yeah, we're gonna tone it down, we're gonna stop firing rockets into the sea, you know, our war with Atlantis is over, it's fine, you know. But this one, I mean, you got nothing out of it, you know. North Korea has not opened up any, you know, any assurances that international people and inspectors can come in and make sure that they are denuclearizing. And I think that the sticking point there was North Korea wants us to stop with the sanctions first, and then they'll get rid of the nukes, whereas we want them to get rid of the nukes first, and then we'll stop the sanctions. And so that's kind of where the hinge point is. And I didn't think that Trump had the chops to deal with that, you know, because you're not going to come home and say, yeah, we're going to stop the sanctions because it's North Korea. They've lied before. Like every time their country is starving, which is frankly all the time, but every time around this time, when North Korea is in a really bad spot, you know, towards the end of the winter, they start ramping up their military propaganda and firing off rockets and doing all this shit so that they can bargain down, right? So like you said earlier on, their nuke program was probably, you know, intended so that they can use that as a leverage point to say, hey, we'll get rid of our nukes if you just stop sanctioning us, right? Well, same deal with how they posture themselves militarily. Every time around the season, they're getting really hungry, like their food stores are depleted because of the winter, right? And now they want eased up on sanctions so they can feed their people. And then in the summer, you know, they'll go back to doing whatever it is that they're doing. So like as the president, you can't be like, yeah, we decided to stop sanctions, and we're going to hope that they're going to hold up their end of the bargain. At the same time, you can't go in there and expect them, North Korea that is, to trust the United States and trust that we're going to lift our sanctions if they get rid of their nukes, because like you said, that's their bargaining chip, right? So it's like a game of chicken, you know.
Well, South Korea is taking the best approach on this. Moon is taking by far the best approach, and it's a shame that he wasn't there.
Yeah.
I really wish that he was there to play as the adult in the room.
Definitely.
But I do think Moon is keeping this stuff alive right now. And let's be honest, both parties are. I do think they are. They do want to come to some agreement.
Mm-hmm.
But let me just go over what South Korea wanted to outline for the goals of the first summit.
Yeah, go for it.
The first step was to set up communications, which had already obviously been achieved. So that was taking place all throughout 2018 with the Olympics, with the two summits between South Korea and North Korea, and then the one in July with Trump and that whole thing. After that, the second step was to set up economic cooperation zones where you would get some South Korean factories in North Korea, and North Koreans would be able to work there. It would set up the prospect of future tourism to North Korea from South Korea. In North Korea, there's this like really famous mountain that people want to go to. So
like a natural wonder.
It would set up attractions like that. And then after that, they would start with a process of connecting roads and railroads in order to get South Korean goods into the country. And after that, I mean, that process would be a step-by-step process. And in return, for each single step, North Korea would go further into the process of demilitarizing or deconstructing some of their nuclear plants or testing zones with each step. And then the last step after all that would be achieved would be a total denuclearization and normalization of North Korea, where they would enter into the world economy and they would have all sanctions lifted. What ended up happening instead was that Trump went in with an all or nothing attitude, and they basically skipped all three steps and went straight to denuclearization. And North Korea can't do that because that's their only bargaining chip. And there was three different stories that came out of the summit. One from America, one from North Korea, and one from South Korea. I trust the one that's coming out from South Korea.
Same. Yeah.
And basically what they said, and you won't be surprised by this, is that the summit was going well, the talks were going well, they were going somewhere, and then John Bolton runs in.
Oh God!
At the last second. He's late. He's like 40 minutes late, and he says that they need to. I just lost this from my notes, but apparently he brought up they were on the way to reach an agreement. The U.S. was going to offer total partial sanction relief, and North Korea agreed to denuclearize some of their bigger facilities. And John Bolton comes in. He's like, also you have to totally give up all your chemical weapons and bioweapons and stuff like that. He just adds more to the table. He just raised the bar for North Korea on that, and then North Korea responds with total sanctions relief. They wanted all their sanctions relieved. And after that, the U.S. walked out. And that's what I tend to believe what happened.
Right.
And
I mean, they just kept adding more things to the bargain, which obviously the other side's going to add more shit too, right? You're not going to get less out of the deal.
Exactly. And that's what led to everything flying off the rails. It almost seems like John Bolton went in there with the intention of screwing everything up.
Well, I mean, I'm not surprised. Like you said, I think he'd prefer that we just go out on ground invasion on North Korea than diplomatically play basketball.
Well, I don't think anyone wants to actually have a ground invasion of North Korea because it's just way too dangerous to do that. Not even for the sake of just South Korea, but for the United States too. Let's not pretend like North Korea, their nuclear technology and the warheads that they have are a joke. They have a real program.
Right.
Their program is they launched a missile into space.
Right. I mean, it's not that it's the most advanced. It's just the fact that they have one. Right. It doesn't make it any less fucking dangerous. Right. They and the artillery that we're just talking about, the Coxswain, they can literally kill thousands of people in minutes, at with no warning. if they wanted to, right? And us westernized countries can't stomach casualties, especially not civilian casualties. Like, this would be 9/11 times a million, like, it would be terrible. It'd be terrible.
Yeah, it would be awful, and that's why I don't think that even like the hardcore neocons don't want to.
Yeah, and I'm obviously exaggerating, right? I don't actually think anyone wants to, but
I don't think anyone actually wants to. I just think that they don't want a Korean peace process to eventually lead to us abandoning those bases in South Korea. I think that's really where the thought, the train of thought is that if all right, let's just say if North Korea, and let's say best case scenario that North Korea and South Korea, they become one Korea, and
they figure it out on their own.
They figure it out on their own. Kim Jong-un becomes like the governor of like Pyongyang
North Korea,
or something like that, and he has like celebrity status as like a duke or something, and he can keep some of his. He can have power like the royal family of England or something. Maybe more along the lines of just having like what's the word I'm looking for?
Aristocratic status, maybe.
Yeah, like aristocratic status, instead of actually being someone who can sign papers and stuff like that. I think that would be best case scenario. But then, what's leaving Moon from turning around after that and saying, "Hey, so we have we have peace, so we can get rid of these 23,000 troops. They're really not doing anything anyway. Like these 23,000 troops."
Right.
Like, can these guys leave now? I think that's the fear. And to bring that even more into context, if South Korea starts if troops start leaving South Korea, I think there's a fear where that could cascade over to Japan.
Right.
As well.
I mean, that's the reason why Japan wants like F-22s,
Well, Japan, so what was interesting, and this story went largely uncovered, about 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago, Okinawa voted to a referendum on the bases in Okinawa. Like, the people in Okinawa are really unhappy with the American bases there.
Well, the American soldiers have been doing some fucked up shit there.
Well, that's why it's been a pretty long there's been a long history over the past like 20, 30 years of a lot of
just
like, a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
It's like various abuses. Like in the 90s there was like a lot of cases of people getting like, there's like this really famous or notorious case of like this 12-year-old girl who got raped by like 3 American soldiers in a van. What happens is that a lot of the times is that when you have a very young population, because most guys there are in their 20s, and even if 99% of those guys are fine, there's always going to be bad apples in a group of
dozens of them,
20-year-olds.
Right.
And that also leads to more prostitution and stuff like that, because that opens up the market for more prostitution, because these guys they don't speak Japanese. They don't speak Japanese or anything like that, so they can't like they can't have a real relationship. So they end up just banging prostitutes the entire time, and it just makes it shitty. Or just think of you wouldn't want any big group of 20 to 30-year-olds located in your city. You know what I mean?
It's like opening up a new college town. Like every single college town in the United States, like they just wreck shit. I went to Rutgers, New Brunswick, and we absolutely tore up the city anytime there was like a big event or anything like that. So I'm sure the city of New Brunswick didn't really appreciate that.
In Okinawa is a tourist attraction, and they're a tourist attraction because they have beautiful beaches. Those bases, they cause pollution and things like that, and they stick them down. Tokyo's in favor of them, and Tokyo wants them down there because you don't want to deal with it. You're not going to put the bases. There is a base in Tokyo, but they're not as big as the ones in Okinawa. They're not going to put a base in near like a really big
major
urban center.
city, right? Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So they put him in Okinawa. So I think there's a fear of that cascading throughout, to Japan as well. And if that happens in Japan, what if that cascades over to Europe? You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, and it would. And to your point, I think a lot of the neocons just want to hold as many, international foreign bases as they can, even though we don't utilize all of them effectively, and we spend billions of dollars every year just upkeeping things that we don't use. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, like, if best case scenario and, Korea decides, like, we're going to become one Korea, they're probably going to look at the United States and be like, hey, maybe you should go get a room.
Yeah. And let's, like, who will be kidding? They're not there because of North Korea. They're there. The pretext is like, yeah, we need them because of North Korea, but they're there because of China.
Right. And Russia to a large extent too,
China and Russia is the reason why they're there.
Yeah.
Like, it's already been the military is.
They want to direct mainland access to both of those places,
Exactly.
And that's a really easy way to do that. Yeah,
exactly.
It has strategic like benefits, but at what point do we say, all right, these strategic benefits are better than propelling peace on the Korean peninsula? There's millions of people in North Korea that are suffering under Kim Jong-un and being crippled under the sanctions. Rightly so. Those sanctions are in place because North Korea's dictatorship is insane. But that doesn't mean that the people should suffer. So just because you're going to lose a foothold on the Asian continent, the mainland Asian continent, shouldn't prevent you from bettering the lives of millions of people. But that's the argument that I think is happening right now in politics and geopolitics specifically.
Yeah, I think that's the major argument is that, do we want, like, all right, it's really dangerous, the game that we're playing here with North Korea, and it's been dangerous for a really long time. We like to make jokes about North Korea being like a joke state and them just being completely brainwashed robots, and them, their missile technology just being archaic and stuff like that. But
and they really love accordions.
Yeah, like, let's just look at the real. Like, they launched a missile into space. They have a legitimate nuclear program at this point. They have the ability. They have enough artillery to kill thousands of people in South Korea. So it's like they are an actual threat. So do you want to play this game of geopolitics with them, just on behalf of having bases to prevent China's ambitions in the South China Sea? Because that's really what I think
we have strike carrier groups for that. Like, we don't need to be on the mainland for that.
I mean, South Korea's Navy it's so behind. I'm not South Korea. China's Navy is like just.
It's really far behind us, and we had a whole episode on their aircraft carriers and how they basically bought one from the Ukraine under false pretenses, and it's really old and it sucks.
No, it was a casino. It was a casino.
No
ship, right?
No, it was an old Russian aircraft carrier, like with the fucking ski jump in the front and everything, right? And China set up a shell corporation, like a fake company, and said, "Oh, we want to purchase this from you, Ukraine, because we want to make a floating casino," right? And then then they bought it, and they're like, "Psych, this is our aircraft carrier now." They've been retrofitting it, and it was funny. I mean, if you haven't seen the episode on that one, definitely go and watch it. It's awesome. But one of my favorite parts of it is that, landing on an aircraft carrier is hard enough. Like, it's literally insane. You're flying. It is a moving target in the ocean, and you actually have to hit the gas when you land, because just the way the arresting gear works. And because they bought this aircraft carrier under false pretenses, nobody from another country is coming to like show them how to do it. Like, they have to figure it out themselves, which is insane. So they're both like learning how to land and take off of an aircraft carrier, and they're writing the manuals on how to train other people how to do it at the same time. It's pretty crazy. I digress, though. You're absolutely right. Their Navy is so far behind ours.
Well, there is a bit of a silver lining with this. It's not like everything is gone to shit. Like, I don't think it was a step backwards. There was just the summit just failed to prevent us. There was no step forward during the summit where there could have been a major step. There just nothing really happened. I don't think it was a step backwards.
It's just a stalemate. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so the U.S. and South Korea, they still canceled their joint mock invasions in the future. You know how they have those all the time where they pretend to invade, which are expensive.
They don't pretend to invade. They pretend to defend themselves, but I digress. Still, it's
pretend to defend themselves by pretending to invade North Korea. They canceled those, so they're not. It's not like the U.S. is eager to just go back, or the Trump administration is to just toss out all the progress that they made so far. But they're really trying to go. It seems like they're really trying to go with this all or nothing approach, where North Korea just totally denuclearizes before there's any kind of sanction relief, and I think they're confident that they can wait them out just because of the economic situation there. However, I just think it's a dangerous game to play. It's especially when, like, you make these demands and John Bolton said only a year ago that we can give them the Libya treatment.
The Libya treatment? He said that?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
He said give them the Libya treatment, and the Libya treatment is basically Gaddafi agreed to get rid of his nuclear program.
Right, and then
And what happened to him?
Yeah, well.
Hillary Clinton had him killed anyway. So It's like Hillary Clinton had him killed anyway. So it's hard to say, oh, denuclearize where you'll be fine, and you have an example of doing that, and you totally just you not only killed him. It wasn't just like Gaddafi didn't just get overthrown.
They brutalized him.
He died.
He was a dick, and he probably deserved it, but they fucked him up.
He died in the way that dictators fear of being overthrown.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
He died in the worst possible situation imagined. He was sodomized with a bayonet up his asshole, just dragged in the streets, just the worst possible situation you can imagine. It was crazy. It was a disgusting video. I don't care to watch stuff like that, but I mean, you should watch it just to get an idea of the fear. No, I think it's when you see it, you feel bad for him. You're a sicko if you don't feel bad for him.
Right. I mean, that's just disrespect for human life. He might have been a dick, but they should have arrested him, put him on trial for whatever it is that he did wrong, and then if it made sense to put him to death, they should have did so respectfully. Like every other civilized nation in the world that has capital punishment, or just throw him in a cell.
But with that example, you can't expect the North Korea to just completely throw out all their bargaining chips, because they're walking a thin line too.
Exactly, and that's running it back to what I said earlier. It's on the one side, like you point out, North Korea isn't going to just give up their nukes with the hopes that maybe the U.S. will hold up their side of the bargain. They've seen what we've done with Libya and other countries in that same regard, right? And on our side, you as a U.S. president, you can't go in there and say, yeah, sure, we'll get rid of the sanctions first. Just please get rid of your nukes afterwards, promise, But I think they're setting up a false choice, right? The stalemate that they're getting to is assuming that those are the only two options, when clearly, if you look at Dennis Rodman, for example, or if you look at the South Korean plan, to normalize relationships between North and South Korea, there are clearly more options there, right? A lot of smaller steps towards getting to what you want, and I think, I'm in favor of that. And you know what? Frankly, if I'm again not a fan of President Trump, but if he wants to go back and have another go at it, I'm in favor of that. Have as many talks as you need to do to get to move the needle forward. but just go in with an open mind and stop being, stop raising the bar. Leave Bolton at home.
I think Trump is politicking as well. He knows that if he gives sanction reliefs, if he gives any type of sanction relief in North Korea,
it's not going to look good for him.
If they don't denuclearize right away, then he's going to take shit for it.
Right.
Like if they don't start deconstructing a testing site, or their really big one they have, that's still the main plant where they enrich all their uranium. I forget what it's called, but I know that still exists. And if they don't go,
well, I mean, they blew up one of their plants, in fairness, but they didn't let anyone go in and check.
They blew up. They took down one of their big testing sites, and then one of their plants, but they still have a bunch more.
Yeah.
And I think Trump knows that if he makes a deal with them without getting something immediately in return, the press is going to go after him. So I think he's trying to politic around that right now.
Right, and he's got a very, very strong battle ahead of him in the next 2 years. He's coming up for re-election soon, and we already got the Democratic side gearing up to take him down. So he can't afford any missteps pretty much anywhere, but definitely not on foreign policy.
Yeah, on foreign policy, he's going to try. I honestly don't even know what his approach is. The Trump foreign policy, his foreign policy is pretty perplexing because, on one hand, you have Trump's instincts, which I think are actually pretty good. I like his instincts in foreign policy. His advisors and the people he has, the people that he put around him are terrible. They're not the type of people who are going to help him carry out his instincts, and that's why you see it's like a bipolar foreign policy when you think about it. Like he does things, but then he also has this really, really crazy rhetoric at the same time. So he'll do things like removing troops out of Syria, and start talking about removing troops out of Afghanistan. But at the same time, he'll have that dogmatic anti-Iran rhetoric and all that stuff,
right?
And, the fire and fury, and then
ratchet up Venezuela or some shit like that.
It's very strange. I think honestly, Trump's foreign policy is very much similar to Barack Obama. I think the big difference is that the major difference between Barack Obama and Trump is that Trump is a lot less eager to support proxy forces and stuff like that. But that's something I agree with him on. However, I think I got to wrap this one up because I got someone coming in.
All right.
Unless you have anything else to say.
Not really, man. I don't know. I'm interested to see what happens, and I hope that we can continue talks with North Korea. Not because I love North Korea, but because I think it's the right thing to do.
We'll continue this conversation throughout the week because this is going to be a story for a while. So,
right.
I put out an episode last week on just kind of like the events that led up to the North Korean summit. So if you want more background, listen to that one. But we'll keep on talking about this at least a little bit until there's more progress, just because it's a major topic. And then
right.
We're probably going to talk about there's obviously a lot more in the news right now that we haven't touched, just because the North Korea is such major news, but we need to obviously get into India and Pakistan.
That's right.
We need to get into a lot of the stuff that's going on in Syria right now.
There's a bunch of domestic stuff picking up with our 2020 race that we got to cover.
Yeah, we got to cover Bernie and all that stuff, and I wanted to cover some stuff in Syria.
Right.
It looks like the U.S. is really putting on their kill shot. They're trying to put their kill shots on ISIS right now.
Mm-hmm. We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, we need to talk about that too. Man, there's a lot of shit we need to talk about. There's too much news.
Yeah.
Which is the problem, because you can only. We're not like specialists in one area. We try to cover everything. But let us know what you think we should cover. Contact us on Facebook or anything like that.
Write it in the comment section of the YouTube videos. We'll love seeing them.
What do you think is the most important topic to cover? Should we concentrate on Asia? Should we concentrate on China? Should we concentrate on the Middle East? Most of our content's on the Middle East right now, but if you guys think that is boring, then we can do other stuff as well. Like that's where we get our most praise is the Middle East stuff that we do. But let us know what you guys think. All right, I got to wrap up. Peace, man.
See ya.